Was Adolf Hitler a hero, a visionary leader, or a villain, a destructive force of nature? Today, with the benefit of hindsight and countless historical analyses, the answer seems obvious, doesn't it? We see the utter devastation of war, the leveled cities, the shattered lives, the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust, a systematic extermination that defies comprehension, and the immeasurable suffering he caused to millions upon millions of innocent people. But to truly understand history, to grapple with its complexities and avoid repeating its mistakes, we must ask, how did so many see him not as a monster, but as a savior, a beacon of hope? In 1930s Germany, during the interwar period, Hitler was not yet the universally condemned figure we know now. He was a charismatic leader who promised, with unwavering conviction, to restore national pride, create jobs, and offer hope to a broken nation, a society teetering on the brink of collapse. Germany was deeply humiliated after the devastating defeat of World War I, burdened by crippling reparations, its economy shattered by hyperinflation, its people desperate for relief from widespread unemployment and poverty. Into this chaos, Hitler stepped forward, offering seemingly simple answers and bold, sweeping promises. He vowed to rebuild the nation's infrastructure, to unite the German people under a single banner, to restore its military might, and to make Germany strong and respected once again on the world stage. For many ordinary Germans, struggling to survive, he was seen as a hero, someone who finally understood their pain, acknowledged their suffering, and offered a clear, decisive way forward towards a brighter future. This script will delve into the complex reasons why so many believed in him and his vision, the sweeping changes he brought to German society, and the personal stories of those who enthusiastically followed him. But will also unflinchingly confront the brutal reality, how that initial hope, that fervent belief, tragically turned to unimaginable horror, and how a nation's unwavering faith in a single man ultimately enabled a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. We'll meticulously trace the path from those early promises of prosperity to the devastating reality of total war, from a sense of national unity to the iron grip of a totalitarian dictatorship, and finally, to the unspeakable horrors of systematic genocide. By carefully examining both the perceived hero that some initially saw in Hitler and the undeniable villain that history now unequivocally remembers, we can begin to understand the complex factors that allowed such a profound tragedy to become possible, and perhaps more importantly, learn what crucial lessons this dark chapter in history holds for us today, in our own time. Let's begin this difficult but essential journey, one that demands we confront the past and see the world as it truly was, in all its complexity and contradiction, not as we might wish it had been, or as we might prefer to imagine it. Only then can we truly grasp the profound and enduring lessons that history so urgently offers us. The story of Hitler is not simply about the actions of one man, however powerful or influential he may have been, but about the collective choices, both active and passive, of millions of ordinary people. And the devastating consequences that inevitably followed those choices, consequences that continue to resonate even today. Before he was the infamous dictator who plunged the world into war, before the atrocities and the unspeakable horrors, Hitler was a struggling, failed artist, his dreams of grandeur unfulfilled, and a bitter veteran, scarred by the First World War. He was a man adrift, searching for purpose. He refused to accept Germany's defeat as a result of battlefield losses. Instead, he propagated the idea that it was due to betrayal from within. A feeling of betrayal and resentment that resonated deeply with many Germans who felt abandoned and humiliated by their leaders. The Treaty of Versailles, imposed upon Germany after the war, was seen as a national humiliation, a constant reminder of their defeat. It crippled the nation's economy, leaving millions unemployed and impoverished, and deeply wounded its national pride. Hitler's fiery speeches masterfully tapped into this widespread anger, humiliation, and despair. He offered convenient scapegoats: the Allied powers who imposed the treaty, the communists he claimed were undermining the nation, and especially Jews, whom he falsely blamed for Germany's economic woes and societal problems. His message was simple, filled with anger and resentment, and for many desperate Germans, it was irresistibly appealing. He promised to tear up the hated Treaty of Versailles, rebuild the shattered military into a force to be feared once more, and restore Germany's lost glory and international respect. Most importantly, he promised to provide jobs and food, the basic necessities of life, to a nation utterly devastated and demoralized by the crushing weight of the Great Depression. Hitler's vision of a resurgent Germany was carefully wrapped in powerful and alluring Nazi imagery, the ubiquitous swastikas, the imposing uniforms, the meticulously staged rallies, all carefully designed to create a powerful sense of belonging, national unity, and strength. Germans, weary and disillusioned after years of political chaos and ineffective, weak governments, desperately longed for a strong, decisive leader who could restore order and stability. Hitler presented himself, with unwavering conviction, as the only one who could save Germany from its perceived enemies and lead it to a glorious future. For millions of Germans, he was far more than just a politician offering solutions. He was seen as a messianic figure, a savior sent to redeem their nation. In their profound despair and vulnerability, many were willing, even eager, to believe in his promises, no matter how outlandish they seemed. This is how a nation, desperately yearning for hope and a sense of purpose, embraced a man who promised them everything they longed for: security, prosperity, and national pride. But those seductive promises came with a terrible, hidden cost, a price far greater than they could ever have imagined. The seeds of unimaginable disaster were sown, planted deep in the fertile soil of desperation, resentment, and national humiliation, and the world would soon reap the devastating consequences of their fateful choice. When Hitler took power in 1933, Germany's economy was in ruins. Unemployment fell rapidly as the Nazis launched massive public works, like the Autobahn, and subsidized farmers. For many it felt like a miracle. Jobs returned, factories roared, families ate again. But this recovery was built on rearmament and debt, not lasting prosperity. Factories made tanks as much as tractors. The economy was preparing for war. The regime seized Jewish assets, firing Jewish professionals and handing their jobs to others. Prosperity for many Germans came at the direct expense of a persecuted minority. The so-called miracle was a house of cards, propped up by theft, debt, and militarization. The reality was far darker than the propaganda. The benefits were real, but so was the brutality. The cost was hidden, but would soon become impossible to ignore. The foundation of Hitler's Germany was already cracking. Hitler and Goebbels knew that controlling minds was as vital as controlling armies. The Nazis seized newspapers, radio, and film, flooding Germany with their message. Cheap radios brought Hitler's voice into every home, creating a nation united by propaganda. Films like Triumph of the Will glorified the regime, while even entertainment subtly spread Nazi ideas. Posters, textbooks, and parades reinforced the worldview. Loyalty to Hitler was patriotic, dissent was treason. Schools indoctrinated children and culture was tightly managed. The result, a reality where questioning the regime felt unthinkable. Propaganda made the Nazi vision seem normal, inevitable, and inescapable. It drowned out doubt and silenced opposition. The grip on the German mind was nearly complete. To truly understand the seductive appeal of Nazism, we must listen to the voices of those who lived through it, those who experienced its rise firsthand. We need to understand their hopes, their fears, and their motivations. Melita Mashman, a member of the League of German Girls, later recalled the powerful and intoxicating sense of belonging, community, and shared purpose that the organization provided. For her, and for many others like her, Nazism was initially about comradeship, national renewal, and the exciting prospect of building a new and better Germany, not about hatred or destruction. Many working-class Germans felt a profound sense of gratitude for the jobs, the newly built homes, and the renewed sense of hope that had been so absent during the Weimar Republic. The crushing hunger and pervasive despair of the previous years were, seemingly, being replaced by opportunity and optimism. As one worker poignantly stated, "In 1932 I was unemployed with no prospects and little hope. But by 1936 I had a stable job, a comfortable home, and most importantly my children were happy and secure." For many ordinary Germans, the moral cost of this newfound prosperity seemed distant and abstract. The immediate reality was that daily life had undeniably improved. But crucially, not all Germans were swept up in this wave of nationalistic fervor. Friedrich Kellner, a dedicated social democrat and a man of strong moral convictions, secretly and meticulously documented the escalating Nazi crimes and atrocities in his diary. Deeply frustrated and saddened by his neighbors' seemingly blind faith in the regime, he saw the insidious propaganda for exactly what it was, a calculated manipulation of the truth, and he felt increasingly isolated and alone in a nation that seemed to have collectively lost its mind. Even some early supporters of the Nazi Party, like the prominent pastor Martin Niemöller, gradually grew disillusioned and horrified as the regime began to systematically persecute innocent people and suppress dissent. Niemöller's now famous and deeply resonant words: "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist, and I did not speak out," so powerfully captured the immense danger of remaining silent in the face of injustice and oppression. The seductive promise of the Nazi regime initially brought a sense of hope and national pride to many Germans, but it came at the terrible price of individual freedom, critical thought, and a clear conscience. Some individuals like Kellner and Niemöller were able to see through the carefully constructed illusion, but tragically, most did not recognize the true nature of the regime until it was far too late. The line separating genuine hope from unspeakable horror proved to be incredibly thin, and it was all too easily crossed, often without people even realizing they were doing so. The voices and experiences of the past serve as a stark reminder to us all that even the most well-intentioned ideas and policies can be twisted and corrupted by those in power. The fervent belief in a charismatic leader, a supposed savior, blinded many to the suffering and plight to the suffering of others, to the persecution of minorities, and to the erosion of fundamental human rights. The ultimate cost of that widespread blindness and complacency would soon become almost unbearable to contemplate. In the end, the alluring hope that Hitler offered to the German people proved to be nothing more than a cruel and deceptive mirage. The grim reality that followed was far more tragic and devastating than anyone could have possibly imagined, and ultimately, the entire world would be forced to pay the terrible price for Germany's fatal misjudgment. Hitler's image as a savior was carefully crafted, fooling even foreign leaders. Britain and France, desperate to avoid war, allowed him to break treaties and seize territory. Each bold move, remilitarizing the Rhineland, annexing Austria, demanding the Sudetenland, was met with appeasement. The world hoped for peace, but Hitler wanted conquest. In 1939, he invaded Czechoslovakia, shattering any illusion of restraint. When he attacked Poland, Britain and France finally declared war. The Second World War had begun. The man who promised peace had unleashed catastrophe. Appeasement had only delayed the inevitable, making the conflict even more destructive. The mask of the peacemaker was gone. Hitler's true ambitions were revealed: domination through war. The world would never be the same. From the start, Hitler's rule meant the end of German freedom. The Reichstag fire allowed him to suspend civil liberties and crush opposition. The Gestapo's terror made neighbors fear each other. Dissenters vanished into concentration camps. Courts served the regime, not justice. Rights were replaced by Nazi ideology. Anyone who didn't fit the Nazi vision, political opponents, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, was persecuted. The cheering crowds masked a society ruled by fear. The price of unity was freedom itself. The hero's promise was kept by terror. At the core of Hitler's regime was obsessive anti-Semitism. The Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of rights. Kristallnacht unleashed open violence. As war spread, persecution escalated to genocide. Jews were forced into ghettos, then sent to death camps like Auschwitz. The final solution meant industrialized murder. 6 million Jews and millions of others killed. The Holocaust stands as the ultimate crime of Hitler's regime. This was evil on a scale the world had never seen. The promise of renewal ended in unimaginable horror. Hitler's legacy is forever defined by this darkness. Was Hitler a hero or a villain? For some, briefly, he seemed a hero. He restored pride and jobs, but at a terrible cost. The economic miracle was a mirage, built on theft and war. National unity was enforced by terror, pride rooted in hatred. The promises ended in ruin, genocide, and the deaths of millions. History's judgment is clear. Hitler was a tyrant, a warmonger, a mass murderer. To understand his appeal is vital, but to call him a hero is to ignore the truth. His legacy is one of destruction and suffering. The lesson is a warning for all generations. History's verdict is final villain.